A man's true life begins when he sheds silence, when he chooses courage over pride, love over ego. Strength is not hardness, but softness that stands tall. Brother, your freedom lies in feeling, in healing, in daring to live fully. I never thought I would speak these words, but there comes a moment when the truth rises from within and demands to be heard. A man cannot walk tall in this world until he knows the weight and wonder of his own worth. Too often, life teaches men to measure themselves by what they earn, by the battles they fight, by the silence they endure. But worth is not tied to the gold in your pocket or the steel in your back. It rests quietly, powerfully in the soul you carry. There are men who wake each day believing they are not enough. They labor with weary hands, give until they are empty, and still whisper to themselves in the dark, "Perhaps I do not matter." That whisper is the lie that kills more dreams than failure ever could. To awaken to self-worth is to silence that whisper and replace it with a song that says, "I am worthy of rest, I am worthy of joy, I am worthy of love, not because of what I do, but because of who I am." The world has dressed manhood in heavy garments, stoicism, toughness, a mask that smiles when the heart is breaking. But those garments can suffocate the spirit. When a man awakens to his worth, he learns that his value does not come from enduring pain silently, but from embracing the fullness of his humanity. He learns that it is not weakness to cry nor failure to ask for help, but strength to admit that he too is flesh and feeling. Consider the oak tree standing in the storm. It bends but does not break, not because it is harder than the wind, but because it is rooted deeply. So it is with a man who knows his worth. He may bend under trial, but his roots, self-respect, self-love, and an unshakable sense of being enough, hold him firm. Without those roots, even the strongest looking man will topple when life storms come. When a man awakens to self-worth, his relationships change. He no longer seeks validation in the eyes of others because he has found it in his own reflection. He no longer tolerates chains disguised as love, nor friendships that bleed him dry. He begins to walk with a quiet dignity, attracting not those who would use him, but those who will rise with him. His presence becomes a sanctuary because he has made peace with himself. There is freedom in this awakening. A freedom from comparison, from the endless race to prove, to conquer, to be more than the next man. Instead, he discovers that the greatest victory is not over others, but over the voice of doubt inside his chest. He walks taller, not because the world has crowned him, but because he has crowned himself. And when that awakening comes, life shifts. The colors grow brighter, the burdens lighter, and the heart steadier. For a man who knows his worth, has found the secret many spend a lifetime searching for, he has learned how to truly live. There is a weight many men carry that cannot be seen, but it bends their backs and shadows their eyes. It is the burden of silence. From boyhood, they are taught to hush their cries, to choke down their sorrow, to lock away their fears behind a stoic face. Be strong, the world says, as if strength means swallowing pain whole and never letting it be known. But the silence becomes heavy, and heavy things, when carried too long, break even the strongest souls. A man silenced by expectation walks through life as though he is armored. On the outside, he looks untouchable, composed, unshaken by storms. But inside, his heart beats against the cage of words unsaid. Each hurt left unspoken, each tear held back becomes a stone added to the load he must carry alone. And still, he tells himself, this is what a man does. This is what it means to endure. Yet endurance without expression is not strength. It is suffocation. Silence has stolen fathers from their children, husbands from their wives, friends from one another. It does not shout when it kills. It whispers. It whispers that no one will understand, that vulnerability will be mocked, that feelings will make him less of a man. And so he nods, swallows, and stays quiet. But the truth is that silence does not protect. It imprisons. It walls off the heart until the man inside becomes a stranger to even himself. There is a cost to this silence, and it is paid in loneliness. How many men sit at crowded tables, laugh on command, and smile for the world, only to retreat later to empty rooms where they cannot speak of the ache in their chest? Loneliness festers in unspoken pain. It convinces them that no one sees, no one cares, and no one would want to bear the truth of their struggle. This lie keeps their lips sealed, but the silence eats away at them all the while. Yet there is courage in breaking that silence. To speak is not weakness. It is defiance against the chains of expectation. It is the moment a man says, "I will not carry this alone anymore." When he allows himself to share his hurt, the weight shifts. It lightens. It does not vanish, but in being spoken, it becomes bearable. His voice, once locked away, becomes the bridge that connects him to others. For what he feared would make him less of a man instead reveals him as fully human. The burden of silence is one of the heaviest loads ever placed on a man's shoulders, but it is not a load he was ever meant to bear alone. When he dares to speak, to let his heart breathe in the open air, he discovers something long hidden. The world does not end when he is vulnerable. Instead, the world leans closer. It listens, it understands, and in that exchange, silence loses its power and the man gains his freedom. For too long, strength has been measured by the wrong standards. Men have been told that strength is the hardness of their hands, the size of their muscles, the ability to endure pain without flinching or complaint. They have been taught that strength means control, dominance, and the refusal to show vulnerability. Yet these ideas, though worn proudly like medals, are brittle masks. They do not capture the truth of what it means to be strong. Real strength is not about hardness. It is about depth. It is not about control over others. It is about mastery over self. A man who redefines strength understands that it is not found in clenched fists, but in open palms. It is not the roar that silences others, but the calm voice that speaks truth even when it trembles. Too many men have broken themselves chasing an image of invincibility, believing they must carry every burden alone, never falter, never bend. But unbending things shatter. Strength is found in bending, in flexibility, in the ability to adapt and rise again after life's storms have swept through. Consider water. It is soft enough to slip through your fingers, yet it shapes mountains and carves valleys. Its power is not in resistance, but in persistence. So it is with true strength. A man who knows this does not seek to prove himself through aggression or pride, but through resilience, patience, and compassion. He does not hide from his emotions, but embraces them as part of his humanity. To cry when his soul aches, to ask for help when the load is heavy, to admit when he is wrong, these acts, though often scorned, are the markings of genuine strength. There is also strength in kindness. It takes far more courage to forgive than to retaliate, more power to heal than to wound, more bravery to love openly than to shut the heart away. Society often praises the conqueror, the one who dominates, but the man who chooses mercy over vengeance, who chooses tenderness over cruelty, is the one who truly embodies strength, for he rises above his anger and proves that he is not ruled by impulse but by wisdom. Strength also lives in endurance, not the endurance of silence and suppression, but the endurance of hope. To keep moving when the road is rough, to keep believing when the night feels endless, to keep loving when the heart has been scarred. That is strength redefined. It is not about never falling. It is about rising every single time, carrying the lesson, not the shame. When a man redefines strength for himself, he gives others permission to do the same. He becomes an example to his sons, his brothers, his friends, showing them that there is no weakness in honesty, no shame in tenderness, no loss of dignity in asking for help. He shows them that strength is not the mask of invulnerability, but the courage to live authentically. And in this redefinition, he discovers that the truest power lies not in conquering the world, but in conquering the fear of being fully human. There is a hunger in many men to control their lives, their futures, their relationships, even the way others see them. From a young age, they are taught that to be a man is to be in command, to keep everything in order, to let nothing slip through their grasp. But life has a way of humbling even the firmest hands. Control is an illusion, a mirage shimmering on the horizon, always retreating as you move closer. The more a man tries to seize it, the more he realizes it cannot be held. A man may plan every detail, chart every path, and still wake one morning to find life has rewritten his story. He may guard his heart carefully, but still be broken by loss. He may build walls of discipline and certainty, yet watch them crumble in the face of forces far greater than himself. The storm comes whether you command it or not. Illness, betrayal, failure, death, these bow to no man's authority. The truth is not that control secures life, but that life is made meaningful in the absence of control. When a man clings to the illusion of control, he exhausts himself. He becomes rigid, fearful of the unexpected, angry at the uncontrollable. He fights against life instead of moving with it. The illusion tells him that if he just works harder, plans better, commands louder, he can bend the world to his will. But bending the world is not his task. Bending himself, learning to adapt and trust, that is where his power lies. True peace is not born of control, but of surrender. Not surrender as in defeat, but as in acceptance. A man who surrenders to life understands that storms will come, but he need not be destroyed by them. He understands that people will change, but their change does not diminish his worth. He sees that uncertainty is not an enemy, but the very soil where growth takes root. This surrender does not weaken him, it frees him. For when he stops clenching his fists around the illusion, his hands are finally open to receive what life truly offers. The illusion of control has broken many men, convincing them that every failure is their fault, every heartbreak a weakness, every twist in the road a reflection of their inadequacy. But wisdom whispers a gentler truth. No man is meant to control everything, and no man needs to. His power is not in the outcome, but in how he meets the unknown with courage, humility, and grace. There is strength in loosening the grip, in admitting, I do not control this, but I can choose how I respond. That is the moment the illusion shatters and reality shines clear. The river of life cannot be dammed, but it can be navigated. The winds cannot be commanded, but they can carry you forward if you learn to set your sails. Control was never the prize. Wisdom, resilience, and trust were the treasures waiting all along. There is a kind of loneliness that wears the face of masculinity. It is not the emptiness of being alone in a room, but the deeper silence of feeling unseen in a world that expects a man to always be strong, composed, and invulnerable. From childhood, many boys are told to swallow their tears, to toughen up, to never show the cracks in their armor. By the time they grow into men, that lesson has taken root so deeply that even when they ache for connection, they cannot bring themselves to reach out. They learn to wear the mask of independence, and behind that mask, loneliness festers. A man can be surrounded by family, by friends, even by love, and still feel a hollow inside him because the role he plays never allows him to be fully known. He may laugh when laughter is expected, speak when the moment demands, and provide when the world applauds. Yet inside, he carries questions, fears, and dreams that remain unspoken. He fears that to voice them would be to betray the image of strength he has been trained to uphold. And so he remains silent. Silence becomes his shield, but also his prison. The tragedy is that this loneliness is often invisible. The world looks at a man standing tall, carrying responsibility, and assumes he has no need. But what the world does not see is the weight he bears when no one is watching, nights when the bed feels too wide, when the thoughts grow too loud, when he wonders if anyone truly knows him beneath the mask. Loneliness in masculinity is not about the absence of people, but about the absence of permission to be vulnerable. This hidden loneliness has consequences. It breeds isolation even in the midst of connection. It drives men to hide their wounds, to numb their pain in silence, or to chase distractions that never truly satisfy. Some withdraw entirely, convinced that their struggles are theirs alone to bear. Others harden further, believing that distance is safer than exposure. The cycle repeats itself. The more he hides, the lonelier he feels. The lonelier he feels, the more he hides. And yet beneath the layers of silence, every man longs to be seen not as a provider, not as a protector, but as a human being who feels deeply, who hopes, who fears, who needs. That longing is not weakness. It is the essence of being alive. When a man finds the courage to let himself be known, to speak even a fraction of his truth, he discovers that he is not as alone as he believed. Others too carry the same hidden ache, waiting for someone to break the silence first. Loneliness in masculinity is heavy, but it is not unbreakable. The mask can be set down, the heart can speak. And in that moment of honesty, what once was loneliness begins to turn into connection, and what once was silence begins to sound like freedom. There is a kind of bravery that has nothing to do with battlefields, with victories won, or with trophies displayed on a shelf. It is the bravery of opening the heart and allowing oneself to feel. The world has long told men that emotions are dangerous, that tears are shameful, that tenderness is weakness. From childhood, many are taught to harden, to guard, to pretend that feelings can be buried without consequence. But burying does not erase. Emotions pushed down into the dark only grow heavier, pressing on the spirit until it struggles to breathe. To feel is not weakness, it is courage, because it means choosing truth over pretense. The courage to feel begins when a man gives himself permission to admit what is already within him. Anger, grief, joy, fear, longing, all of these are part of the human inheritance. To deny them is to deny life itself. But when he allows himself to feel, when he acknowledges that his heart is not made of stone, but of living flesh, something begins to shift. The armor loosens, the walls crack, and what pours through is not weakness, but honesty. Honesty takes courage because it demands vulnerability. It is easier to hide behind silence than to say, I am hurt. It is easier to clench fists than to say, I am afraid. But courage has never been about what is easy. It has always been about what is necessary. Feeling deeply requires a man to stand naked in his own humanity. It asks him to confront the ache of loss without numbing it, to sit in the discomfort of sadness without running away, to let joy move through him without fearing that it makes him soft. It is the willingness to be touched by life in all its beauty and all its brutality. Many men fear that once the floodgates open, they will drown. But the truth is that feelings are rivers meant to flow. When blocked, they turn stagnant. When released, they cleanse and renew. The courage to feel also transforms relationships. A man who allows himself to feel becomes a man who can truly connect. He no longer offers only the shell of himself, but the depth of his spirit. He can listen with empathy, love with openness, grieve with sincerity. His presence becomes richer because he is no longer hiding behind the mask of indifference. Those around him feel safer, seen, and valued because his courage to feel gives them permission to do the same. And within himself, the rewards are even greater. The man who feels is no longer at war with his own heart. He does not waste his strength fighting back tears or silencing joy. He lives with a fullness that cannot be found in numbness. He learns that pain does not destroy, it teaches. That fear does not paralyze, it humbles. That love, though it risks loss, is the very force that gives life meaning. To feel is to live, and to live fully is the bravest act of all. Love is the thread that holds a man together when the weight of the world tries to pull him apart. It is not just the romantic kind, though that too has its beauty. It is the deeper, sustaining love that shows up in many forms. The love of a mother who believed in him before he believed in himself. The love of a friend who stood by him when everyone else walked away. The love of a partner who sees the man behind the armor. And the love he learns at last to offer himself. Without love, a man may appear strong, but inside he withers. With love, he finds the strength to rise again and again. Too often men are told that to need love is to be weak, that independence is the true sign of masculinity. They are urged to stand alone, to rely on no one, to keep their hearts guarded. But isolation is a slow poison. A man without love becomes like a tree without water, still standing perhaps, but brittle, lifeless, hollow. Love is not weakness. It is the lifeline that nourishes the soul and reminds him that he belongs to something greater than himself. Love gives meaning to effort. A man may toil for years, chase success, gather wealth, and still feel empty if there is no love to anchor it all. But when love is present, even the smallest moments become sacred. A shared meal, a gentle word, a laugh exchanged in the quiet of night. These are not luxuries, they are lifelines. They tether him to the beauty of being alive. They remind him that his worth is not measured in achievements, but in the depth of his connections. There is also the matter of self-love, often the hardest kind for a man to embrace. The world tells him to prove himself outwardly, but seldom does it teach him to honor himself inwardly. Yet without self-love, no other love can truly be received. To look in the mirror and say, "I am enough," is one of the most radical acts a man can perform. Self-love does not make him selfish, it makes him whole. It allows him to give to others without losing himself, to forgive his past without shame, to move forward without fear of unworthiness. Love as a lifeline is not soft or fragile. It is resilient, unyielding, powerful. It gives a man the courage to face battles, the patience to endure trials, and the hope to believe that tomorrow can be brighter than today. It is the hand that pulls him from despair, the voice that whispers, "Keep going," the warmth that stays even when the night feels endless. Every man needs love, whether he admits it or not. It is not an indulgence, but a necessity. It is the difference between merely existing and truly living. When love flows through him and around him, he is not only stronger, he is alive in the fullest sense, connected to himself, to others, and to the sacred fabric of life itself. There comes a time in every man's life when he must choose between being right and being whole, between clinging to his pride and embracing his peace. Ego whispers with a sharp tongue. It tells him to never bow, to never admit fault, to win every battle even when winning costs him everything. Ego convinces him that respect is earned by never backing down, by never showing softness, by standing taller than the next man at all costs. But what ego does not reveal is the quiet destruction it leaves behind. Many men have lost love, friendship, opportunities, and even their own lives because they chose ego over life. Ego builds walls around the heart. It tells a man that apology is weakness, that forgiveness is defeat, that vulnerability is a danger. But these walls do not protect him. They isolate him. He becomes a prisoner inside the fortress he built to prove his strength. And yet, no fortress can shield a man from loneliness, from regret, from the ache of disconnection. Ego may crown him king of his own castle, but what use is a kingdom if he rules it alone? Life, on the other hand, calls him toward something greater. To choose life over ego is to choose humility, to choose love, to choose peace. It does not mean surrendering his dignity. It means realizing his dignity was never under threat in the first place. A man who chooses life understands that an apology can heal more than it wounds, that listening often speaks louder than shouting, that letting go of the need to dominate opens the door to true connection. He discovers that respect earned through compassion and honesty runs deeper than respect demanded through pride. Ego feeds on fear, the fear of being seen as weak, the fear of being overlooked, the fear of not being enough. But when a man chooses life, he faces those fears head on. He accepts that weakness is part of being human, that being overlooked does not erase his worth, and that his value is not tied to proving himself again and again. In that acceptance, fear loosens its grip and ego loses its power. To choose life over ego is not easy. It requires courage to put down the sword when every instinct says to fight. It requires wisdom to walk away when winning would cost too much. It requires strength to say, I was wrong, or I need help, or I am sorry. But in these moments, a man is not diminished. He is expanded. He becomes larger than his pride, larger than his anger, larger than the illusions that once ruled him. The greatest victories a man will ever know are not in defeating others, but in defeating the small, stubborn voice of ego within. For when he chooses life, he chooses love, connection, freedom, and peace. He chooses a path not of endless battles, but of meaningful living. And in that choice, he discovers that the truest strength is not in standing above others, but in standing fully, humbly, and bravely as himself. Brothers, the message is simple yet profound. The life you long for is not found in silence, not in the armor of ego, not in the illusion of control. It is found in awakening to your worth, in daring to feel, in embracing love, and in choosing life itself over the shadows of pride. The world has told men for centuries to harden, to hide, to fight alone. But that story has only written loneliness and quiet despair. A new story must be told. Strength is not the absence of tears, but the courage to shed them. Power is not control over others, but mastery of the self. Freedom is not found in walls, but in the willingness to open the heart. A man who learns this becomes unshakable, not because storms do not come, but because he stands rooted in truth. So let this be the turning point. Let this be the day you lay down the burden of silence, the weight of ego, the mask of invincibility. Stand in your humanity. Stand in your worth. Choose connection over isolation, peace over pride, love over fear. For in doing so, you do not just survive as a man, you live fully as a human being. And that, my brothers, will save your life.